everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Hospitality and Technology. Thank you for taking time out and being here today. My name is Ana Milas. I'm the head of marketing at Serengeti. Serengeti is a software development, nearshoring and offshoring international consulting company. Our clients come from a variety of industries: finance, industrial manufacturing, retail, hospitality. We are focused on disruptive and fast-growing fields of IT, such as BPM and machine learning, supported by DevOps mindset and agile principles. We develop modern solutions upon clients' request, all while hanging on to rapid application development platform with boilerplate modules that we have developed in-house. Today, we will take a sneak peek into hospitality industry. This is a $570 billion industry with over 700,000 hotels and resorts and over 16.4 million rooms worldwide. Smart technology is changing the way we travel. Today's competitive hospitality market requires companies to use advanced technology innovations to ensure the guest satisfaction. Therefore, hotels power up by technologies such as artificial intelligence and application development. For guests, this means automated check-ins, mobile door key, mobile HubSpots, controlling room temperature, room service, booking massage from a mobile app, booking a ride, etc. The main goal of every technology-based service is to improve guest experience with superb convenience. Today, we will cover introduction to Protel, our client from the industry, top hospitality technology trends, how hotels are using technology for competitive advantage, Serengeti and Protel project collaboration. Luckily, we get to speak to an experienced manager with a proven track record of success of over 15 years in this industry. I'm happy to introduce my today's guest, Mirko Gudel, Director of Business Technology at Protel, a leading technology ecosystem provider for large hotel groups. Mirko, thank you for joining us. I would like to start off our conversation with you telling us more about your job, your roles, responsibilities, a little bit about Protel, what you do, etc.
First of all, thank you, Anna, for your invitation. So, as you said, I've been in hospitality industry for last 15 years. I need to say that my roles were always related to technology and development, as well as the product management. Through my history, basically, I more or less worked in the biggest hospitality software providers out there in the industry. So I've started with Micros, then a merge with Micros and Oracle happened, then I spent several years with Oracle, and I was with Sabre as well. So I think that I'm quite experienced when it comes to the transition of the technology through the last 15 years and how do hospitality software companies handle the transition between the technology changes from traditional old systems to the cloud itself. My current role at Protel is Director of Business Technology, where my primary task would be execution of new projects. So that implies that product management, research and development, and deployment of the hospitality software solutions within the cloud. What we really need to take into consideration that technology, especially in the last few years, technology changed a lot. So the concept of the cloud and the software as a solution has been there for many years, but with big providers such as Azure and AWS, it actually gave that small push to the software providers to deliver more. From a Protel perspective, we're completely deployed on AWS cloud, and I think that comparing what we have now to software that was maybe 10 years ago, it's completely different from a cloud perspective. So let's say that 10 years ago you would put servers in the cloud, you would have a hosting somewhere, and that has people call that the cloud software. These days, with AWS and proper cloud providers, you're moving a lot of functionality and you're inheriting a lot of functionality from them directly in the cloud. Example would be sending of the emails, queues, communication between the softwares, continuous integration, continuous deployments. These are all the benefits that you get with the cloud provider. And Basically, these days, to have that 99.99 availability, it became much easier. Yeah.
What kind of projects do you work on? Can you just name us?
Well, the latest project that we are working on is a rebuild of Protel existing cloud offering. So a few words about Protel before we go into this topic. So Protel has been on the market for 25 years. It is really important to mention that our founders are still with Protel. So they were the ones who did start up 25 years ago, and they delivered an amazing solution. So they have a proven track of record. They've actually understood that at this point in time they need to rebuild their software for the next 25 years. And that is basically where when the point where I joined Protel. So the idea was to take an existing property management solution that we had and rebuild that, taking into consideration all of the benefits of cloud technologies that we have these days. So the latest project is complete rebuild of the our cloud offering. That project was initiated a year ago. So the task that we got there was to build a completely new PMS, taking into consideration that we had the customers and the data already in the cloud, but complete workflows, certain business logic had to be rebuilt from the very beginning. Project was executed it started in September last year, and now a year after, we already have 900 hotels that are on the production environment and completely adapted to the new system. So it was quite agile and bumpy experience.
I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in next month that a complete portfolio of the customers will be completely transferred to a new solution, and we would depreciate the old version of the software that we have, right? So quite agile and fast project.
Awesome. That sounds good. Talking about hospitality in general, what would you say would be like the top technology trends in hospitality?
Well, there is...
Especially like in the future, not like when I'm saying like, what would you predict would be the trends in like the following year or so?
There is a lot of small companies out there that do extremely good job. But when you look into the hospitality, you need to start with the core, and that is where the PMS, hospitality PMS providers are.
Can you just, sorry to interrupt, but PMS for the people who
don't
know what it is?
Absolutely. So it's a property management system, right? So it's the core central system that is actually helping hotels to do their core functionalities.
Okay.
So maybe I can just give a simple example of how hotels operate, and just to simplify it completely. So you have a hotel that has 100 rooms, right?
Okay.
You have actual rooms are called inventory. And the end goal would be to sell these rooms, right? So that inventory gets pushed to an outside role to the guests. You all are aware of the Booking.com, Expedia, and all of these channels managers out there. Once the inventory is pushed outside, guests will create certain reservations. These reservations go back to the property management system, so to the PMS, and then the operations of the hotel will utilize this system to do check-in, check-out, payment. They forecast inventory. It's basically the core system that the complete hotel staff is using.
Okay.
But yeah, it doesn't definitely end there, because hotel itself, it has quite complicated ecosystem as well. Take into consideration their booking engine. Then if you go to hotel room, it's normal that you have a pay TV, you have a phone, you have a key card system within the hotel. All of these systems are connected. So yeah, you're not surprised if you go to a hotel, you check in, and on the TV you say, "Welcome, Mr. Goodell." That basically means that there is an integration between the property management system and the pay TV system, right?
Oh, okay.
So quite complicated. And then in addition to that, there's accounting systems where you send invoices and revenue, like SAP and similar systems that handle the complete accounting side, plus all the channel managers and distribution portion. So quite complicated ecosystem.
Yeah.
Plus, we all need to take into consideration that availability and uptime is really important there. guests could come to a reception at any point in time, and it is definitely a must to have that uptime of the software basically at 99.99%.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah. What would you say when we speak about the proprietary management system and things like that? What would you say? What kind of technologies or how do hotels use these trends in technology for their competitive advantage? Like, I mean, you have experience with all these hotels.
Absolutely. So, if we look through the history, right? At one point, they did it all manually. They had these cars in the hotel where they would sort of program the cars. That was the start of the software within the hospitality, right? We had the times when certain old-fashioned systems that worked in DOS or whatever were a hype, right? And at one point, the new technology came out, for example, Windows and relational databases, right? So there is a clear transition from an on-property systems to Windows technology, and now the latest trend would be definitely a cloud technology. But all this happens with a certain reason, right? So hotels, we all need to understand that for hotels, what they want to achieve is occupancy of 100%, right? So if you compare what we had before, a hotel would have their own database, they would understand what is the inventory there, but as these days everything is internet-based, it is a must that that inventory is pushed somewhere to the internet itself, right? Because that's how you do sales, right?
Yeah.
So from that perspective, keeping a complete inventory somewhere within the cloud, having proper integrations with all the channel management systems out there helps hotels to reach that 100% of occupancy. But it definitely doesn't stop there, because when we travel, what we really like to see within the hotels would be that experience, right? That's the reason why we have so many of these major accounts. Each of these chain hotels, they have their own set of standards, right? And they have them in order to differentiate their brand from another brand, create certain guest experience, and create loyalty where same guests would always book same hotels, or at least the same brand, right? So taking all this into consideration, just to summarize, we need to say that definitely from a trend perspective, everything goes to the cloud. You need to have a proper set of the APIs, personalization layer. You need to expose your complete database outside to the internet so that hotels could drive their marketing, automations, and different initiatives that they have to reach that 100% of occupancy. This all sort of made it a bit complicated as well, because as we all know, there is a lot of security and related issues with the hospitality as well. So from a PCI compliance perspective, everything's in the cloud, so security and stability comes first, but then obviously complete guest experience and giving the data to hotel is what is really trendy right now.
Okay, so talking about products, the minimum viable product is a version of a product with just enough features to satisfy early customers, provide feedback for future product development. When you execute products or projects, how do you plan MVP? How do you decide whether you need external resources
So it's definitely a challenging process, right? I'm lucky that within the team we have a lot of experience. So Protel has been on the market for 25 years. From a product management perspective, we have an amazing team. We have an amazing back-end developers. These are all the guys that have been with Protel for years, right? So all of them, they understand how hotels operate. They understand the functionality, right? However, when you decide to create something completely new, right? There is something called time to market, right? And if you're building something for a long period of time, you lose your focus, and that could end up in any direction, right? So definitely, and this is not something that is too spectacular, right? All of the software companies, what they do, they define an MVP as a minimum valuable product. As I mentioned, we're lucky that we have quite a lot of experienced people within the team that would define, okay, what is a hotel? What is the core functionality of the hotel? What is that they're trying to achieve, right? So, as I mentioned it before, the idea would be to have this inventory, receive the reservation, do check-in, check-out, do payment, and you're done there, right? So from that perspective, we've defined a list of the functionalities that is a must, right? And so no bells and whistles around the product itself. But then again, we had obviously working through the Scrum approach and taking into consideration that we have continuous integration and continuous deployment, we were able to put additional features within the MVP within the daily basis, right? Mm-hmm. So literally, like I think that our MVP was actually our beta was rolled out somewhere in February. In mid-May, we've actually started with the migration process for our cloud customers. Obviously, the first official version was released mid-May. That created a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of confusion. There is that saying in IT, in case you're not embarrassed by your first release, you release too late, right? So what we did, we created a minimum viable product. We released that. Obviously, I'm now focused more onto the front end. From a back-end perspective, we had a lot of functionality that has been there waiting for the front-end guys to complete a complete build, right? But what we would do, we would actually monitor the customers. PMs and support team and the business development would have daily calls with the customers, and we would basically get an input from them, right? Okay, you understood what you had with an old system. New system is something that is completely different, so you have different workflows, different UI, user experience, it is completely different. But what is that you're missing, right? Although like we were really good in anticipating what they would ask for, we obviously missed certain functionality, right? So then what was really important to start with that continuous integration and continuous deployment and do like daily releases and exposing new functionality that the hotels would need, right? So that's the reason why I say it was quite bumpy now. It is September, we have around 900 hotels that are completely working from the using the new software. I think that actually shows that we did quite a good job in terms of the migration process, but definitely we do not want to stop there, right? We need to understand that from a hotel perspective, that creates additional workload on their end. So imagine that you work in, I don't know, let's take something simple like Microsoft Word or Excel or whatever, and someone designs a complete new version of that software, so the button is not on the right side, it is on the left side, right? So for hotels, especially for the front office staff that has that direct communication with the guest, that is challenging, right? Yeah. So as I said, MVP, good training, we had video materials that were online, PMs, support and business development team, we had them working around the clock, and yeah, it was really challenging summer, I can say that, yeah. So I do hope like in the next month that will be behind us and that we sailing, can or I've actually used 2 weeks of vacation, so yeah, that covers that topic. But anyway, we don't want to stop there, right? With the new product, we used all the benefits of the cloud, we used new technologies, we did a lot of, how to say, like for example, I'll put in some new functionalities that we have. We've completely redeveloped like a passport scanning solution that is embedded within the PMS. We did text-to-speech and speech-to-text functionality implemented, that is completely implemented within the PMS. So there is a lot of new features. The expectation of the hotels would be if you change the software that you give them something extra, right? Mm-hmm. Now we're going into the marketing automation direction. We want to empower our hotels to react better, that they can actually target their guests directly from the PMS, because we are the ones who completely understand the whole history about the guest itself. We understand their, like you have this RFM, recency frequency monitoring of the guest, like when was the last stay, how many room nights did he spend, how much money is he living in the hotel. That is really important, and then the whole point of retargeting of the same guest is something that we're working on.
Yeah. So that's, data.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So going back to us, the Serengeti, could you tell us about the criteria that's needed for outsourcing to external partners? What do you?
Well, yeah. How to say? So first of all, before even you start, I would say that developing actual development is only a portion of rolling a product to the market itself, right? So we had a clear understanding of what is that we need to deliver. We had a complete understanding of the APIs and the backend and the functionality that we have and what we still need to build. And once we had that ready, we've decided to kick off the rebuild of the complete front end or user experience module, right? Mm-hmm. So I think for having really certain team leaders within your team. So when we talk about the cooperation with Serengeti, it's important to mention that we have a team leader from the protel end who's really experienced. We can talk about technologies as well. He's really experienced Angular developer, and he's the one who created the proof of concept, right? Okay. But the project itself, that's a huge project. It's not a one-man task, right? So all of the missing positions were filled by Serengeti resources, where we've assigned something called technical product managers as a direct connect with your guys. We need to understand that we talked a bit about the hospitality. Maybe I've simplified it a lot, but it is a complicated system. Let's just take into example the legal and fiscal requirements. You have Croatia, Austria, Germany, USA. All of these countries have completely different legal and fiscal requirements, right? So when you code, you need to support all of that if you want to be present on the specific market, right? So our technical product managers are ex-developers, experienced resources that completely understand the hospitality, and they work closely with the Serengeti resources. So I need to say that, like, I work in many companies, and with this project, what we didn't have would be these meaningless, long meetings and calls discussing what do we do. It was really cool from an execution perspective. The guys immediately understood what they need to do. They had technical product managers who would advise them. They would basically, these guys would connect remotely to their local environment. They would say, okay, that makes sense, it doesn't make sense, right? And they did an amazing job, right? We had to break down the tickets into the smaller ones, obviously, because just that learning curve in hospitality is quite tough. So but what Serengeti resources did in the last 6 months, that I need to say that is actually quite amazing.
Yeah. Can we repeat this again? That's great. Another question: how do you measure the velocity of the team and seniority levels? Which parameters do you consider?
Well,
when you do that?
Yeah, that's a complicated one. So definition of the velocity is quite simple. To simplify, that would be a certain movement over time, right? So
exactly.
In software, you have these user stories and user points, right? So, and then you have sprints that are just a week or 2 week definition of the time, right? From a velocity perspective, we don't really measure it to an extent that we have some sort of an Excel file and we say it's that much or that much, right? Obviously, we do a good estimation of the tickets. We understand the seniority of the developers. Plus, we have the technical PMs that are there to answer any technical or business knowledge related questions, right? So if you really break down these tickets into small chunks of items that a certain developer needs to do, I think that the whole velocity problem is gone. Mm-hmm. So how to say, what we never did was to give a huge epic or several tickets to developer and say, okay, just do your stuff, right? That's not the way how we work. We would break that down into the small tickets. We would obviously have the refinements, the daily calls. We would actually call them and say, okay guys, okay, do you understand? Like, show me what you have in your local environment, right? So there was a lot of communication going on between the developers and the technical PMs and the product management team. So I think that from the velocity perspective, we completely understand that the Serengeti team did their best. We delivered what it was, how to say, when we kicked off the project, we were not even imagining that in 1 year we will deliver an MVP, right? And what we did, we delivered not an MVP. Now we have a full parity against the old system, but in addition to that, we have 900 hotels that are actually live, right? that they're completely using the system, right? So I mean, what I really need to say is that from a velocity perspective, from the whole team interaction perspective, when we interact with them, like we don't even feel that they're an external team, right? So good job, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. It will be quite unusual in this time if I haven't asked you a question about COVID-19. So how do you see the effect of pandemic on the hospitality industry? I mean,
it's definitely not easy. I think that airlines and travel industry had the biggest hit, right? So
yes.
You have issues to book a flight right now, and if you go to hotels, there are all of these rules and regulations. If you look into the big hotel destinations, I don't want to name any companies out there, but one company in Las Vegas just laid off 18,000 people, right?
Oh, wow.
So it is huge. We, as a software provider, we do understand that we need to work with these hotels, right? Not for 1 year or 5 years, right? It's almost like a lifetime partnership with the hotels, right? And we're trying to help as much as possible, right? So a complete upgrade to a new version was free of charge from our end for the hotels. We came up with an occupancy-based pricing as well, right? So we understand that in case there are no guests within the hotel, it's really hard for them to operate and pay for their expenses, right? So our approach was, okay, if you're 10%, you pay for a portion of your monthly invoice. In case you're between 20% and 50%, right, you pay something different. If the occupancy is reaching 100%, then we charge more. So definitely, I think that was a good initiative to help the hotels to go through these difficult times.
Yeah, very professional. Yeah. Good. Well, Mirko, thank you once again for joining us for our webinar. It was a pleasure. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. We have sales@serengetitech.com where you can reach us at. For more information, there's our website, www.serengetitech.com, and also please beware that we have LinkedIn, Xing, Instagram, Twitter, and we always have a lot of information that we put on there. Thank you.